What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, continuing my deep dive into everything available out there that is live from Frank Zappa, both official and unofficial releases. Today, as I continue, this is part 2 of my deep dive into the Winter 77 tour, which took place from mid-January to mid-ish, early February of 1977. This is the same band minus Miss Bianca, Lady Bianca, from Fall 76, which you can hear on the Philly 76 release. The core band that was on Zappa in New York. They're also were released on Zappa Erie, right? We got a 76 show on Zappa Erie. But this is the 5-person band of Eddie Jobson, Ray White, Terry Bozzio, Patrick O'Hearn, Frank Zappa. We got 2 shows to talk about today, both from Sweden, January 15th. And then we don't have another show available until January 21st. I'm assuming there were a couple dates in there that we don't have recordings of. I'm going to talk about these 2 in order. Do the 15th, then we'll do the 21st. Then I'm going to rank these among the other one I've already done. Continue ranking as we go on. Let's start with the 15th. Not very good sound at all. However, the guitar is really loud, so you can hear everything Frank is doing throughout the entire show. That's kind of cool. It's an incomplete show, so we don't start until midway through Jones Crusher. So we're missing the Torture solo, we're missing the Pound for Brown solo, probably wasn't I'm the Slime early on, so we're missing that solo. So we're missing 3 what are probably pretty important solos, mainly because as we get to the next show, those 3 solos are absolutely fantastic. So we come in late to the show. Vocal parts are really rough sound-wise. When we're getting to something like Broken Hearts Are for Asshole, Dong Work for Yuta, it's just like, you no idea really what's going on. You get a sense of the song, but you can't pick out like O'Hearn's little quips, or you don't really know what Terry's doing in Dong Work. So it's a frustrating listen. Starts off midway through Jones Crusher, then we get a My Guitar. Sounds like it sounds good. You know, what I'm able to get through it. The guitar is super funky in the intro. It's got a nice and dirty solo in there. The bits that are able to come through sound good, and Frank's definitely bringing it on the guitar. This is a really dirty, gritty rock energy to it. Trying to grow a chin. The stuff Frank's playing on guitar, he's on guitar in this, playing little licks, are pretty interesting. So that kind of redeems the poor sound quality. Broken Hearts Are for Asshole. Frank drops a short little solo in the beginning. Dun, 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 dun. He's got this little short, not very long, maybe 10, 15 seconds of that. But it's interesting because that's normally not a part of Broken Hearts. That would not last. I don't think it even happens again. The ending of Broken Hearts goes on way too long. Like, it just goes on and on and on and on. You can't hear it as well in this one, but in the next one, the show from the 21st, as it goes on and on, it becomes this little deuce coupe, little poop shoot, a little deuce coupe / little poop shoot cover as they're playing around. Probably sounds better in really good sound quality. Here it just drags. Then we get a Dong Work for Yuta, which the crowd is clapping along really, really, really loudly too. They're really into this moment. Acapella version of that. It's rough listen on here. Then we get a Manx Needs Women, which in any show from 77, like, to me, this is a rough run. This sort of Broken Hearts, Dong Work. You get Manx as sort of this like oasis in the middle of this desert. And then you get a Titties. It's just this rough section that night after night after night, I'm only 3 shows into it so far. You're just like, okay, this is, the Manx Needs Women in the middle of it is just like, it's Frank doing what Frank does, going, I know Broken Hearts is it's stupid. I know Dong Work for Yuta is stupid. We're going to drop a Manx Needs Women in there to just blow your mind. And then we're going into Titties and Beer, which I know is stupid. But the genius of Frank is that he plays up the duality of Frank experience really well. Then we get a Black Napkins, which is the highlight of almost every show from this tour. We get a Ray White solo, which wouldn't stick around. I I don't think he gets any more for the rest of this tour, at least in a Black Napkins. But Ray White goes first with some scat singing, kind of super chill. The sound is pretty bad in here, so it's hard to make out really what's happening. Then we get a little bit of O'Hearn kind of by himself. Then Jobson comes up for a violin solo. Sounds interesting. The sound is pretty crappy, but it sounds like he's delivering a good solo. The audience response is huge, as it was for the first show. Then we get a nice Frank Zappa solo, where he's kind of tiptoeing around, kind of doing that little like, that Zoota Lures thing from earlier in 76, where you're just kind of painting ideas and sketching chords and being kind of light. Then about a couple minutes in, he starts to get really, really heavy. We go from sort of pink napkins to black napkins and just like a flip of a switch, probably literally. Gets kind of super nasty, super aggressive. It's kind of jarring, the sort of tonal discrepancy between the pink napkins early portion and the black napkins end portion. I don't know if that has to do with the sound quality of the tape, but it just feels like Frank is here, yeah, kind of beautiful. And then it's like, angry. Both solos are intriguing. I think there's a little tape cut at the end. Something goes wrong at the end. And then we get a Dynamo hum, a Camarillo Brillo, and a super short Muffin Man solo. That's just really short. I can't say I would recommend this tape at all. The sound is way too rough. The highlight is the black napkins, and maybe the little short Broken Hearts of Rassel solo is kind of cool. But I would say you can skip this show. But the next one we have, a complete show from January 21st, 1977. This is in Gothenburg, Sweden. My bad. Fantastic, super solid show. The sound is not great, but it's listenable. If you can stand what it sounds like in Peaches and Regalia, you will be able to listen to the entire thing. I don't think it's bad. And this is one of those shows where you're like, if they were to release a complete show from 77 and it was anywhere near the quality of this one, that would be a fantastic release. There's a number of things that we haven't really heard. I think the version of I'm the Slime on here is pretty interesting. The Pound for a Brown solo has the vamp in that has this really almost like 80s synth techno robotic vibe. Some of the way that O'Hearn and Bozio approach the vamps remind me of like Fowler and Humphrey from 73, where it's funky, but it's really stiff at the same time. It manages to kind of be both. Really interesting groove. The Pound for a Brown vamp, I think alone would be worth it. The Jones Crusher, the version of Jones Crusher that's on here on this entire tour is kind of like ZZ Top, Lagrange meets Captain Beefheart vocals with little bits of what we know as Jones Crusher thrown in with this super proggy synth thing that comes in, that's just fantastic. To hear a really good quality version of this would be amazing. My guitar is just kind of heavy, kind of slow, but it's got some good, like, just rock energy to it. There's a version of Cruisin' for Burgers in this. They only played it 5 times on this tour, or at least that we know of. It is essentially the Zinni version, the Zappa New York version, just without the big horn sounds, but it's that instrumental version of Cruisin'. There's a cut in the solo that's pretty rough, but what we get sounds like it's pretty cool. Be nice to have the full version of that. So that would be fun to hear. What else from here? The Black Napkins on this is absolutely epic. And then the final Montana that he would play until we'd get one more, in 78? We'd get a bunch in 79. But until December 84, when Frank all of a sudden wanted to play a solo again, there's no more Montana solos in Montana anytime he plays it, except for that week in 84. Also, he goes right from the solo into the vocals. We don't have the "I ride the small tiny horse," which Jobson did as an instrumental on the previous show. So this show has a lot to offer that we don't have officially released. The sound is good, and the guitar solos, while maybe not epic, are all well worth listening to. Opens up with Purple Lagoon, at the world famous Scandinavian concert, as Frank calls it. We get a Peaches, which sounds amazing. The particular instrumentation, the sounds that Jobson has on his keys sound amazing. I don't know if it's Ray White's guitar or Frank's guitar, but there's a guitar in here that sounds absolutely amazing. I would just love to hear this Peaches, just to hear this band do Peaches, to hear this, instrumentation playing this song. My favorite Zappa song. Torture Never Stops is fantastic. Frank is soloing between the verses, even like throwing off some licks before we get to the actual solo spot. The solo starts off chill and tasty. He gets pretty aggressive pretty early. He's got this definite motif that he's playing with. He's got an idea that he kind of builds on this idea. Like he's patient, but you kind of know where he's going. Whatever O'Hearn and Bozio are doing on rhythmic support is just perfect, as always. They manage to they leave a lot of space early, and then they kind of tighten the rhythm as it goes on, and it just kind of propels the energy forward. It's a really nice, intense solo. At one point, Frank brings it way down and just starts making like weird noises, kind of gets trippy. It's kind of playful. It's kind of out there. Like he's having a good time. Way too short. There's no real peak to the solo where we kind of build and build and build and then dun-dun-dun. But it's super fun. You can tell Frank's in a good mood, and everything O'Hearn and Bozio are doing is just fantastic. We get almost a cold stop at the end. It's like dun, 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 dun. Then we go into Big Leg Emma. There is a cold stop after Big Leg Emma. It's weird this late in his career to hear a cold stop after a song. We get an I'm the Slime, which sounds a little more confident than the one from the previous show. This is the second of 6 they would play on this tour, or at least that we know about. FC's tearing it up on the solo. Sound is not the best sound here, but it sounds like what's going on is groovy and it's heavy and it's got this like robotic funk element to it that Bozio and O'Hearn bring. It's a solid I'm the Slime. Pound for a Brown just sounds amazing. I just love the way just the rhythm, that when they get into the vamp for the solo, it just has this really almost like programmed synth robotic funk to it that's absolutely amazing. O'Hearn's bass playing is just helping like escalate the solo and giving it this more of this like uplifting vibe. They bring it back down again, and again he gets kind of spacey, he gets weird, he gets playful. Frank's having a really good time in which he's like going hard earlier and then kind of experimenting a little bit, kind of like what he would do in those Zoodalures from like 76, going back to that thing. We get a short little like 3-minute drum solo at the end of Frank's solo. Then we go into Jones Crusher, which is amazing. Just this arrangement of Jones Crusher, as fantastic as the Blue version is, and that is a fantastic version, the sort of shake your booty, the one we all know. This one is just weirder in all the right ways. We get a My Guitar, which is nice and slow and nice and heavy, typically aggressive solo, but it fits perfectly. Then he introduces, the name of this song is Cruisin' for Burgers. They play Cruisin' for Burgers. It's amazing. Sounds good. Bozio's fills, the stuff Jobson's doing on keyboards. The guitar solo has sort of a similar motif as the one he uses to start off the Zinni solo. So it's got the same, kind of feel like he's just going to go in that same direction and just explore the same ideas. And then once things start to really take off, we get a horrible, harsh tape cut that takes us to the end of the song. I have a feeling we're missing some fantastic soloing in here. And the end of this is just epic. It just feels so big and so rock and so awesome. And then we get a cold ending. Stops cold. This wasn't in the set list earlier. This is the first of 5, so Frank's dropping this in here. I think when it comes back later in the tour, I don't think it's in this spot. I think he throws it later in the show. But we'll find out in a couple weeks. Then we get a Broken Hearts. You can hear the vocals a little bit better, so that makes it a little more enjoyable. Get that little Goose Creek vocal jam at the end. Then we get a Dung Work for Yuta. And there's a cut in this, and I'm okay with that. We miss a good portion of the song, and I'm not going to complain. We get the always welcome Manx Needs Water. We get a Titties, which sounds great. O'Hearn's bass on this is just fat and funky, and O'Hearn is really, O'Hearn, man, absolutely fantastic. The whole middle section is about, I think at one point Bozio was like, what's the scene, man? And Frank's like, devil doesn't say, what's the scene? What are you, a jazz devil? You could be a polka devil. Kind of makes jokes about the scene and devils and San Francisco. The jazz devil, I think that becomes a motif in this part. either in this tour or later in somewhere in the 77 tour, the Jazz Devil thing kind of pops up over and over in Titties and Beer. I think it's this tour. I think it probably, since this is the first time I've heard it pop up. I don't think it popped up on the previous show. And then we get just an absolutely monster Black Napkins. It sounds epic from the start. As soon as they start the song, you're just like, yeah, this is it. This is the moment. This is the highlight of the show. Frank is just absolutely tearing it up through the entire head, just soloing the entire time. Then as soon as we get to his solo spot, he's just off. It just feels like every time he's just getting bigger and louder and more aggressive. Bozio is absolutely pushing him. It's super crazy. It's kind of nasty. It's just absolutely like just a gorgeously aggressive Black Napkin solo. And that's it. We get that, and then we go right into a Jobson solo. And again, O'Hearn and Bozio are fantastic. They're funky, but they're also kind of tight and robotic. It's also, there's this weird stiffness to it, but it's kind of groovy. Like whatever they're doing rhythmically, like the combination that they have reminds me a lot of Fowler and Humphrey from like 73. And then Thompson joins the band and things start to loosen up a little bit. And they're just, that funk just like seeps a little deeper than it does with Bozio. But Bozio's, yeah, just a whole different approach, but still, there's this weird stiff funkiness to it. And Jobson, the sound is not the great, but is not the best. You can't like, Jobson just sounds like this electric blur. It's just this blur of notes. But it sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely amazing. He kind of peaks, he kind of brings it down and lets things simmer before they go back into the theme. It is just a fantastic Black Napkins. Both solos are amazing. I've said this before, if they were to release a box set of every single Black Napkins solo, you start off with the head, like an early head from like 75, and then you just have every single solo just edited together, and then you go into like the closing. That would be epic. Then after the Black Napkins, we get a Camarillo Brillo with the fast, slow part. We get a Muffin Man. This is kind of your typical epic Muffin Man solo. It kind of peaks early, and then Frank kind of brings it down for some, again, this is like the third time in the show where he kind of peaks, and then before they go back into the song, he kind of brings it down so we can kind of mess around for a while. And as they're messing around, we drop into a full-on like reggae groove as Frank's soloing, and we get some, I don't know if it's Jobson on keys or Ray White on guitar, or maybe it's both of them that just have just this full-on reggae beat, which maybe planted the seed that would eventually turn this into a reggae number by the end of the next decade. So for shame on that, but it's pretty interesting as far as this Muffin Man goes. It's kind of cool. And then we get, I believe, the last, at least that we have a recording of, the last Montana with a guitar solo. We wouldn't get another guitar solo, like I said, till 84. I love the way this sounds. It just sounds weird with Jobson's keyboard sound in there. O'Hearn's bass is super funky. But yeah, we don't get that tiny little horse section. The solo's pretty short, but it's pretty interesting. There's some cool stuff in there. And O'Hearn, just his bass playing just absolutely sounds amazing. But it's neat to hear a Montana for the last time with a solo. It's an awesome show. It is a really, 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 really good show. If this were to be officially released, if they discover this in the vault, and this is the only one, and this is the one release, I don't think I would complain. I think this is a pretty, we're maybe only 3 shows into it review-wise, but 8 days into the tour. So there was probably a couple shows we don't have tapes of. But yeah, just some really interesting, good stuff, some neat songs, some interesting arrangements. And Frank's guitar playing is just excellent throughout. And Bozio or Hearn are delivering on the rhythmic goods as they would all the way through early 78. Where would I rank these shows if I had to rank them among the others? Right there. The 21st, easily being the best. That first one I did last week, the 13th, would be number 2. And then the 15th, for mainly the sound and the fact that we're missing a good portion of it, would be the least. Yeah, I'm not even sure. The only reason that 15th is worth listening to is because Frank's guitar is so painfully loud, like it just cuts above everything else, that it's interesting to hear what he's doing in like a rhythmic capacity and in songs in which he's not soloing. So that's pretty interesting, but that's pretty much about it. But yeah, fun little deep dive so far. The set lists aren't going to change. Eventually, we're going to get a City of Tiny Lights is going to pop up in a couple more shows. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, we'll see how these black napkins hold up, and we'll continue on. All right, that's it for today. Until next week when I drop, I think we're in Germany maybe, or the Netherlands. I think we head out of Scandinavia and head towards the main continent for the next shows, I think. I don't know. I might be wrong. We'll find out. That's all I got. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let me know your thoughts on these shows. I'm Frank and all that stuff. And peace. Talk to you later.